I know you had a variety of internships, working at the White House and then also with the nationwide organization. And I think you had that aha moment there of going from like 350 an hour to 850 an hour. So I was just curious if you could talk a little bit about like keeping your mind open to those new possibilities, even if you don't necessarily have the technical expertise for it.
For me, I wanted to get exposure to these government agencies to understand, where I would want to make an impact. And then in graduate school is what really opened my eyes to different possibilities, where I won this national business commentary competition sponsored by the Executive Leadership Council. And so I met all these executives, and that was the epiphany that you could control large budgets, influence capital, lead people, and through that you can make a tremendous difference. And so that was the first opportunity that I realized that if my overall goal is anchored on my purpose and my why is to make this world a better place, right? In the most simplistic terms, is deeper than that, but that's the simplistic view. So then once I anchor on that, I could realize that there's a multitude of ways to achieve that. And so that's what I learned about corporate America and banking and finance in particular, because capital and banking and finance is at the center of everything, right? If you're a new company and you want to launch, whether you're a government, you need to finance a hospital, your schools, for instance, banking and finance, if they want to build a new building, right? It's at the core of everything. And so that's where I realized I could take my passion, learn finance, and look for opportunities to fulfill my purpose.
Do you have any advice, maybe, or like one thing to keep yourself open to those opportunities? Because I think one of the things, it's like that balance, right? Of, keep focused and like head down, but then it seems like one of the keys was that you were open to kind of changing that path.
Yeah, so it's again, I would encourage all students to be intentional about broadening your perspective. Right, you may lock into, as you're pointing out, a certain way that you perceive this is what I'm going to have to do to get into this type of company. But if you really anchor on what is it that I'm trying to achieve, and then what steps do I need to take to broaden the network, to learn, to be more exposed to some of these concepts that can better inform my thinking, that's how you then are open to the possibilities, right? And so part of it is, listening to resources like what you all have created. Brilliant idea of you saying, hey, we want to solve a need for students to democratize insight and access. It's the same type of thing. You will have to own as an individual. You are the captain of your career ship. You will have to own understanding, how can I feel comfortable that I've exposed myself to enough content and insight that I can realize that there are different ways to accomplish what I want. Now, at the same time, if you have specificity, that's a great thing, right? So if you know you want to be a cardiothoracic surgeon, there's pretty clear defined paths, right? If you want to go into some of these professions, it's pretty clear. But ultimately, if you're anchored on a type of industry or company or something, there may be a list of 10 things, but having 4%, four of the 10 rather, is the equivalent of having the lion's share. So you could devote mind share to, again, these other things about being a well-rounded learner. One of the things I can tell you in terms of advancing in your corporate career, what differentiates you or distinguishes you is not just your knowledge or insight, because a lot of people have that, right? So it's how you can think more broadly, how you can draw connections, how you can communicate information, writing, and so all of that really becomes useful for one to stand out or advance, because it's just not going to be the subject matter that propels you, because unless you just know something that no one else knows, uh, you start in an analyst class, so you're all learning the same thing, right? So what is going to differentiate you or enable you to be broader in understanding, if I want to go into this type of product group or this type of industry, it's your ability to think, learning how to think, process, ask questions and expand your views.
So I was curious if you could talk a little bit about like how do you find your passion and make sure that you are following it, and then also if you're like as a leader, how do you inspire that passion in other people?
Regarding your passion, I would go back to that same approach of taking a skills inventory, right, and setting goals and understand is it that you like about your job. Now you're not going to skip into work every day, and I love doing these spreadsheets. So it's more of a understanding your competitive advantages. What do you bring great passion to, and you have an ability to synthesize, analyze data, and clearly communicate what you're seeing or find the needle in the haystack. When you start matching, this is what I do exceptionally well, right? Better than most. And then here are jobs where this skill set is really required to be successful, or this will give me that advantage because I do this in my sleep, right? This is my natural gift that has been given to me.
There was one thing that you said in there about you know a mentee especially respecting your time and having good questions. And you had a LinkedIn post there about the art of mentoring. And I was wondering if you could explain a little bit about like how can a mentee be proactive, and specifically like show that initiative by having an agenda and being specific, and like how does that help build that relationship?
Well, let me say it this way. There was an example where I would mentor people and then I would get, outreach from other folks, and I could spend, 18 hours a day just responding to people trying to mentor them. Or I can say, hey, you're 2 years out of college. Your advice may be more timely and critical for going through the interview process for the internship. Been a long time since I've done an internship, right? So that will be an example of me saying, "Hey, could you speak to these students for me?" Because again, one, it's going to give them tactical advice. They're not thinking most likely of 20 years from now. They're thinking like how do I best show up in this interview? What does my application need to look like? Those are the questions. So I think there's simple things like that where you could be of service, or if you notice that leader is helping out with some company event that you decide to volunteer, right? So there are ways or things that you can do. Just look for organic ways to help, right? Or just offer. Like you could say, hey, I deeply appreciate the time that you give me. If there's anything I could ever do, I'd be delighted to do it. Like then you just put it out there. I may or may not take you up on it, but at least I know that you are willing to reciprocate and add value where possible.